It's the top 5 enchantments, right?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I mean, honestly, at this point, we kind of use most of those takes. Welcome back to Commander Countdown. This is the series where we poll the community on different Commander topics and share those answers with you. And today we're going to be going over the top 5 enchantments for Commander. But before we get into your top 5, we're going to talk about our honorable mentions that we adore and think should have been on this list. Veggie, what do you got for us?
Well, it's very definitely not the best enchantment in Commander, but I think it is the best enchantment for Commander. It's Descent into Avernus. Avernus? I don't know, you D&D nerds. I just know that I like it. It's 2 in a red for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, put 2 Descent counters on Descent into Avernus. Then each player creates X treasures, and it deals X damage to each player, where X is the number of counters on it.
Yeah, you played this recently in Chicago and you were getting multiple upkeeps, so we were all taking 1 billion damage and making infinite treasures. It sped up the pace of the game in multiple ways. A, your life total going down very quickly, but also your mana base just... Yeah, I know, Hammy doesn't like it. But also your mana base just gets out of control super quickly and you can really start to pop off in those early turns. So this is your new favorite pet card?
Not new favorite. I've put this in a lot of decks. It just sadly has not shown up against you in particular. But I've liked this since it came out because it's just Commander faster. Because one of the downfalls of group hug, which I am somewhat familiar with, is that you can give a bunch of people resources, but that doesn't necessarily speed up the game. It just means everybody's doing their thing earlier. If people are just countering each other's stuff or not doing anything, it's still going to kill you because it does all of that damage more and more and more each upkeep.
I like those kind of cards as well. Mono red player where, each player takes a bunch of damage. And this one's really unique too. I like the fact that you're going to get to use the treasures first. For instant speed stuff, that's not super relevant, but for sorcery speed and playing creatures and developing your board, Descent into Avernus is a big bonus for you because it is on your upkeep instead of each opponent's upkeep or each person's upkeep. So let's go ahead and move on to my honorable mention. I don't play it a ton, but I definitely think it deserved a spot on the list, and that is Black Market Connections.
This is 2 in a black enchantment. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, choose 1 or more. Create a treasure token, you lose a life. Draw a card, you lose 2 life. Create a 3/2 colorless shapeshifter with Changeling, you lose 3 life.
It's really cute. The Changeling comes in handy a lot more than you might think. You can put it into a lot of different black decks that you might not typically see. So we were making a red-black Pirates deck at one point, and this worked. It goes into a ton of things. Plus, it's card advantage and board states, everything you need. I think this card is cool, and it's a little pricey. I'm glad that it got a reprint.
And it's another one of those hey, here's just more Commander for you. like mana and cards and creatures that work generically good with lots of things. And you can choose as much of it as you like. Not as little as you like, though, because you can't choose none.
There has been games where I've seen this kill people. So let's go ahead now that we've talked about our honorable mentions and talk about your guys' top 5. And again, don't forget to vote. We have a link in the description down below for all of our future topics over the next few weeks, so you can get your votes in to make sure that we have the most up-to-date or best list possible.
Do it, because spoilers, you're wrong this week.
Let's go ahead and talk about number 5.
It's Mirari's Wake. I love this card.
Me too.
This is 3, a green and a white for an enchantment. I guess I don't need to say that every time. Creatures you control get +1/+1, and whenever you tap a land for mana, add 1 mana of any type that land produced.
I love creatures. I love token decks. I have my original Mirari's Wakes. I have 2, I think, from back in the day when I opened them in whatever that
Judgment.
set was. Yeah, I was going to say Judgment or what was it, Tempest? In that ballpark. And I still love them. I'll never part with them. They are fun. Creature decks. Yay.
Yeah, and I apparently there's a line above whenever you tap a land for mana, add 1 more. But this is such
more creatures is what it means. More creatures, more fast.
Yeah. I just like this was such a mind-blowing card back in the day because you just didn't have anything else that did this, and it did so much. Like what a classic, and the fact that it's still very playable now is very fun. And I don't know. This is, you all know this is not my style, but I will 100% play this card in any deck that has these colors in it. I just never play these colors.
I do. Okay, so question. The Anthem and the more creatures, more fast.
Yes.
But what are you doing with the second part?
Well, it would be to help play more expensive things in the other colors that I put in this deck.
I see. So what you could just use like a Nissa or something for that sort of double mana effect, right?
Sure, you could. But I don't know. Nissa is killable. Well, I think a Planeswalker is a little more fragile than an enchantment. Plus, Nissa only hits forests. This is such an iconic card because it was super broken when it came out. It was right around when I was starting to play. And I don't know. I think it's players are starting to rediscover it.
So you're playing it for some of the nostalgia.
Yes.
I play it for more creatures, more fast. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to number 4, which actually doesn't exist because the card name that you guys submitted is not a real card, right?
I think per the rules of Magic the Gathering, it is technically a card because the name of the card you could name for things that care about naming cards. Therefore, it is a named card in Magic the Gathering.
But this is not an enchantment. So if you can search your deck for an enchantment, can you get this?
Nope.
That's cheating. This is not an enchantment.
This number 4 is the Prismatic Bridge. Can you flip it over? Because I can't read it.
But we have to read this part, don't we?
No.
Okay, fine. Okay, we're going to only read the part you can't search for because it's not searchable.
The Prismatic Bridge, one of every color. At the beginning of your upkeep, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature or planeswalker card. Put that onto the battlefield, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. I don't know. It's a very good enchantment, I guess. But
and the funny thing is, I think we mentioned that the next topics were going to be enchantment, and we thought people would do it. So I think it got voted up because of that.
Oh, right.
Also, Scarab God was on this list voted for enchantments.
One
vote for Scarab God. So at this point, the people in the voting are memeing. But if that's what you guys want to do, we're here to meme. Make sure you guys please also go vote so we can drown out the memes.
Yes. Okay. Well, what can I say about this as an enchantment for Commander? Assuming it is not your commander, I don't know. It is a strong effect, but you're only able to play it in 5-color decks. It's legendary, so like I would want to be making copies of this, but there are only so many things that can actually do that and to an enchantment and make it not legendary.
Yeah.
So it's honestly maybe not that great for Commander.
From what I've been told, it's pretty busted in the command zone. So that's good, but it's not an enchantment and you guys are cheaters. Let's talk about one of the really best enchantments. Number 3 coming in, doubling season.
It's 4 and a green. If an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many instead. And if an effect would put 1 or more counters on a permanent you control, it puts twice that many on instead.
Yeah, I like building creatures, tokens, and counter decks. They're very fun. I play this in a lot of decks. And I enjoy it greatly. I really like the new Wildsville Drain arts that came out with the goose, like the anime golden goosey one. That's the best.
Yeah. This is also like a back in the day card.
Yeah.
Because when it was printed originally in Kamigawa, it wasn't good. The rise of planeswalkers made it super busted. Just the sheer number of additional tokens and counters and things that have been added to the game, I think really just in the more recent years, have turned this into like weird niche jank card. I lost track of my words. It took it from weird niche jank card to like one of the best enchantments in Commander.
Oh, powerful. What's the genie's line? all powerful, super something something. It seemed like a good spot for the. Can you put it in the video?
I don't. From what?
From Aladdin.
Oh.
Itty bitty living space.
Oh. We'll get demonetized. Disney will come after us.
Let's go ahead and move on to number 2. And I just want to say that it shows how evil all of you are. Let's talk about Ristic Study.
Why is this 2? Why have you put this at number 2? This is not right at all. Ristic Study, for those of you unfamiliar with the card, it's 2 and a blue. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may draw a card unless that player pays 1.
I'm sad that it got a reprint. Like, I'm glad because I didn't have one and I needed one for like more like powerful decks. Mm-hmm. But I'm also sad because it made it cost less, which means I see it more. Like, there were some people that just a $40 card was just not in their realm of budget. But, you know, now they have a really annoying access to a $20 card.
I guess. I think we roll in slightly different circles, because for me, it was always like, oh, if there was, like, this was the exception. Like, I can't really, like, this is like a budget deck, or I'm not really putting a lot of money into Magic. Oh, no, cool. I mean, I got a Ristic Study because, like, I had to. Like, the card is messed up. That was the one thing that was like everybody had.
Okay.
For me.
Yeah, I was playing mostly with Commander Babies, and the Commander Babies aren't building with the $40 bills as much from what from my sad kids table. Here we are. Mm-hmm. Leave us some comments. Let us know your thoughts on Ristic Study. Is it good to play?
I do think that I do think it's very funny that a card that I think that's by far the worst card on the list outside of a commander setting. Like it's absolute garbage in one of the worst Magic sets of all time.
I opened it in limited and was like, no, thank you. Please put $20 bill in card box.
Yeah. Just so happens that the format breaks it.
So coming in at number 1, we have a very similar card. And this, for me, like you were talking about for Ristic Study, was always my exception. I would have a very like low powered deck or a budget list, and I would always try to squeak this in. And coming in at number 1 is Smothering Ti.
3 and a white. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. If the player doesn't, you create a treasure token.
I like treasures, and I like white. I play a lot of Orzhov. I play a lot of Selesnya. I play a lot of everything. Boros. I play a lot of. I just like this card.
It's good. It is very good. I've had a really hard time saying that this is better than Ristic Study.
Yeah, I agree. It is not better in Commander, but it is. It could have made it on number 1 on the list because it's people's favorites, right? The top 5 list is open to some interpretation on how you vote, whether that's power level or the best thing for the format or your favorite card. I can see it being number 1. It is very popular.
And it does have some advantages, like over Ristic Study. It's a lot easier for your opponents to justify giving you a treasure than it is to giving you a card, and for double the price if they want to stop you.
I love hoarding my treasures like a little treasure gremlin.
This is in a category of cards that like I try to avoid playing, and then I'm like, oh, but this does make this deck a lot better, doesn't it?
Yeah, this is in that category for me. I just ignore that thought when I play this card.
I just recently, when we went to MagicCon Chicago, I brought 3 casual decks with me. Mm-hmm. And 2 out of the 3 of them were running Smothering Ti.
See?
Not even just because they were generically good. It actually played into the strategies of them. One of them wanted non-token, or one of them wanted non-creature tokens, and the other one wanted token. I don't know. They both wanted tokens. And so I was just like, okay, what else? I nothing else to compare to. This just is the best option here.
Now that we've gone over our top 5, we're going to take a look at some of our patron submitted deck lists that fit the theme of today's episode.
The first deck list for today was submitted by our patron Tarbeast, and it is Yurlok of Scorch Thrash. Right? Did I read that right? This guy's been on my short list to build because, as if I had planned it, it is a very back in the day kind of commander. For one, a black, a red, and a green, you get a 4/4 with vigilance, but a player losing unspent mana causes that player to lose that much life. It brings back mana burn, and you can pay one and tap it to add a black, a red, and a green to each player's mana pool.
That is mean, and you can do that at any point. So you activate it on your turn to spend the mana and force everyone to take that damage if they don't have instants.
Yes,
that is, yeah. You just get to like basically lightning bolt people in the face over and over again, and kind of punish them for like unused soul ring, right? Because a lot of times you just tap for the one colorless. If you, kind of a mean commander. Let's take a look.
Already, bing bang boom. Birds, Delighted Halfling, Ignoble Hierarch, Llanowar Elves,
Elder.
Yeah, there's a lot of things making that are making your mana for you, and that helps since you've got a 3-color commander.
And then we have some sort of like fun utility stuff like Eternal Witness and Seedborn Muse that allow you to recur some things, get some extra mana advantage.
We're blocking it. Wait, now say it.
There's a Tempting Worm.
I think Tarbeast and I actually have discussed this deck a little bit. And it's what's nice here is Tempting Worm does play into the strategy, because if people don't have anything in their hand to spend the mana on, then they're just going to take damage. And in particular, you are giving them extra mana. Like there's the commander that does it, but also if you look at like Belby here, that's adding mana to each player's mana pool. So you don't want them to be able to take advantage of that. You might as well put their stuff on the board.
That's what the Tempting Worm is for, is to trick them into using their okay.
Yeah, it's always what it's there for. It's tempting.
This is a unique build. I don't think I've seen anything quite like this. A couple more ramp spells. We have Rampant Growth, Kadama's Reach, Farseek, Cultivate. We're more than set up on our mana.
Okay. Yeah, just simple ramp and tutors.
Yep.
Not a lot of instants, which is surprising for a deck that wants to give you extra mana at weird times.
Couple of rocks, but not too many. But I think that's okay in this deck when we saw so many other creatures and sorcery speed mana fixing rampers.
This is a card I've been trying to work into more decks. Sting, the Glinting Dagger, will untap your Yurlok every turn so that you can, again, add more mana for you to use and to burn them.
All right, so now we're getting to the meat of the deck, right, for the topic of today, which is the enchantments. So let's talk a little bit about the different enchantments that are in this deck and how these ones are specifically utilized for this deck.
Now, I'm familiar with a lot of these, but you're not going to see them in any deck outside of Yurlok. I used to have a kitchen table 60-card mana burn deck. So stuff like Citadel of Pain, where you are dealing damage to a player equal to the number of untapped lands they control at the end of their turn, usually would mean nothing.
Yeah. But you're forcing them to have to choose to... They take the damage either way, whether they're floating the mana or not. So that's really helpful. And if they are... the only way they get around it is by using all of their mana every turn, which, Tempting Worm might make it so they can't.
Right.
The ley line. Don't see a lot of ley lines in Commander games.
We've seen a couple on deck techs where I'm like, these are not good. They're not good in Commander, but they feel great the one time that you get them. And this one is relevant. Like it's a significant mana sink. And you have a lot of things that are tapping for mana. So like when you get this, it is a huge advantage. Mana Flare, important to point out, because this doubles mana for all players. So that means that you have to, like, the opponents have to figure out exactly how they're tapping for things, because they're going to get burned for each of those extra ones. Price of Glory is another one that you're not playing anywhere else. It's dissuading you from tapping your lands on other players' turns without taking without the bad things happening. You have Mana Barbs, which is hurting you for tapping land. You have Price of Glory, which is punishing you for tapping lands. You have War's Toll, which is also punishing you for tapping your lands. So you're desperately opponents are desperately trying to figure out ways to avoid the mana burn damage and just running into other traps.
Yeah, I think this is a good example of how versatile that enchantments can be, especially in decks that put a lot of them in there. And there are so many that you can make a really unique game plan like this. Because you said a lot of these you're not going to see in your typical deck because they have such a fixed game plan. And it's really cool to see them used in this way together. Lands.
All right.
There's 35. You okay with that?
I'm okay with that. 35, because we also saw at least 3 1-mana dorks. We saw some ramp.
It looks like we have a good mix of color sources as well here. We've got, the shocks and some fetches. So mana shouldn't be too much of an issue.
The 2 things that stick out to me here, Terramorphic Expanse, Myriad Landscape, Evolving Wilds. Because compared to the rest of the mana base, which almost entirely comes in untapped if you want it to, having those be tap lands that are kind of slow, maybe those feel a little out of place to me in this mana base.
So thank you very much, Tarbeast, for submitting this very unique list for us to take a look at. Let's go ahead and give it a bit of a rating on the decked out official rating. So to start, mana base, what are you thinking?
It seemed pretty solid to me. It was fairly balanced. We saw a lot of non-land mana sources.
Yeah, there was 4 sorceries, 2 or 3 rocks, and like you said, some mana dorks. So what would you rate this out of 5 for a mana base?
I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5 as far as mana base goes. I think you're solidly able to cast what you want to cast, and I feel like the mana base matches the power level of the rest of the deck.
I agree. I feel like I could give it a 4.5, but we're not really doing those split ratings, and it's not quite a 5 because it had those tap lands, and it looked like you could sort of optimize that mana base just a little bit better. Next up, let's talk about synergy. The synergy of the deck, to me, seemed pretty fleshed out. A lot of the cards, the enchantments specifically, really worked towards the game plan of what your lock is trying to do. Would you agree with that?
Yes. I would want to explore it a little bit more, I think. The enchantments, I think are just on point. Really really brought me back to the days of of mana burn and things like that. And I wonder if there are some even sneakier deep dives that you can find in other categories.
All right, on a scale of 1 to 5, what do you give it for synergy?
I'm also going to give this a 4 out of 5 for synergy. There were a lot of really fun, deep cuts that were brought into this that really brought me back. And I think I would struggle to find a lot of things to update this with, but I think there are a few other hidden gems.
I think I would be a little higher on it only because I was actually very impressed with the amount of synergy that I saw in the deck. But
I think I'm a little biased since I'm especially familiar with these very weird cards and in this strategy in particular. But I think to a non-connoisseur of mana burn based strategies, it probably is a 5 out of 5.
Awesome. So seeing as how you're a big fan of this type of deck, flavor-wise, I have to assume you would rate this pretty high.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think just the nature of this deck and this strategy makes for a very flavorful deck. Even if you just look at the enchantments, half of them are named mana blank, blank mana boy,
spikes.
Yes, and then everything else is all spiky and fiery and super jundy. I think I can't give this anything else other than a 5 out of 5 for flavor.
I like this because it's sort of a built-in alternate win condition, which I find to be super unique. This is not something you would see in your typical deck. I find it to be very jund of an ability, and I think it is super cool. So I would agree with you. Personal rating, Veggie, how did you like this particular deck list? Let's give ourselves a little bit more breathing room out of 10.
Oh, the 5's easier.
Okay, well, let's do 5. We're doing something new. Let's do 5.
Yeah, this is easier for me because then I can give this a 5 out of 5.
You could have done 10.
Well, because then I'm like, oh, but maybe this is like a 9 or like a 9.5 on a 5-point scale. It's like, oh yeah,
easy.
It's not a 4, it's a 5.
Great.
Yeah. Also, like on our 10 scale, we really only gave like 4 numbers.
That's true.
It's a cool less play commander using an odd angle strategy, and has gone to the lengths of finding all of the weird little pieces that make it work. And I think the deck is super functional, a great power level for what I like to play.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of cards in here that I really liked seeing. There are good, solid synergies within the deck. I wouldn't mind seeing a couple more clear paths to victory outside of the long-term burn. So, Nerd Girl scale, you're going to get a 4 out of 5, but that is still incredibly high from both of us.
Mm-hmm. I'm just telling you all now, it's not just because there's a tempting worm in it. That does not give you an automatic 5 out of 5. It just usually will.
Next up, we have a deck submitted by Rob the Princess, and this is actually a partners deck.
This is the specific partners, Trin and Sylvar. Sylvar is a 4/2 for 5 mana. Menace, sacrifice a human, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and it gains indestructible until end of turn. And Trin is a 3/3 for 4 mana. At the beginning of your end step, if you attacked this turn, make a 1/1 white human soldier creature.
Now, the last one was really your kind of deck. This is my kind of deck. I love some Mardu. I love token generation and sacrifice and getting to utilize sort of like blood artist effects. I think this pairing is perfect.
Mm-hmm. And these like partners with commanders always lend themselves to a very specific, like they tell you what to do. Mm-hmm. You know, the one is like, hello, I would like to eat humans and swing. And the other one's like, oh, I would like you to swing and I will make humans. Great.
So let's take a look. Oh man, Adeline is such a messed up commander card. Like just a powerful card.
And conveniently makes a bunch of humans to be eaten.
And you can eat things with Athreos. This is everything is speaking to me. It's making my little nerd girl heart happy.
Yeah, this is just like Trin and Sylvar, i.e. Nerd Girl's greatest hits. But notably, not so much of a Nerd Girl greatest hit, Dockside Extortionist is making an appearance in this deck.
This was a sponsored submitted deck list, and it did play in the episode. We don't want to give too many spoilers, but I did play Dockside for 1 treasure.
Get ready for the internet. Right, fixing, you know? It's just there for the fixing. I like Garna a lot.
Yes, Garna's really cool.
Like drawing a card for everything, for every creature that you have, as long as they're dying in combat. Shannon Sleeper's Scourge, I think is a fantastic card that does not get played enough. I want to see how many legendary lands and legendary spells there are in this deck, because if you just look at the list of creatures, it's not that much. Like to me, this is not. It's like on the line of making it worth it for Shannon, but maybe we will see some additional things that will help us out with that. Spoilers, I do know what they are.
It does help a little bit that you have 2 legendary creatures in the command zone.
Right.
Jessica's Will, Blasphemous Act, very iconic staples. I'm really interested in this Blood for the Blood God, though. in the instance.
All right. Whoa.
I'm excited.
We're getting there. We're getting there. I want to point this one out. The 4th Erlingus. How are you all, those of you who are playing this card, tell me how it's been going for you, because I think it's a very good card that was made for Commander, broke some other formats, but I feel like I never see anybody playing this, ever.
Yeah, actually, it's not too much of a spoiler, but I did draw that card and never quite found a good spot to play it. Now, part of that was mana issues or sort of not being the way that I wanted to attack with current board states. But yeah, it seemed like a cool card. I just didn't get a good opening. Okay,
All right, so we're gonna breeze past the instance.
No,
I think.
blood for the blood god.
And it works out really well since one of your commanders is just straight up a free sack outlet. So you're never really worried about paying full price.
Yeah. Embercleave. NerdGirl's greatest hits. Let's go.
Yeah, I guess you are like this deck does both go tall and wide.
It does. Not very many rocks.
None. I mean, like
One.
Soul Ring, I don't count. That's in every deck. But yeah, no rocks have been added. Right.
I'll give them credit for one. Now we're going to get into the meat of it. We've got the enchantments, the theme of today's episode, and these are going to be drastically different than the enchantments we saw in the last deck. So let's take a peek and see how we're utilizing this card type.
Yes, it's in a very specific way. You'll notice we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 backgrounds.
Yes.
And the one thing about backgrounds is they always give some sort of thing to your commander creatures. So if you have partners, it gives that thing to each of them.
Yep.
They are also legendary enchantments, which is why the Shanid earlier in the list is so relevant, is because that also triggers off of these. So you're cantripping on every background as well. Yeah.
It also does help with like the sort of token theme we have going on, so we can eat as many as we want with Anointed Procession. We have Bastion of Remembrance, which doesn't generate a lot of tokens, but certainly benefits you for doing so. And the Cathar's Call there, I was pointing at it because I was thinking I might not be able to remember the name, but I did. So that's going to also poop out a bunch of little dudes.
You're going to point out the limited uncommon.
I even remembered its name. Because it was a limited uncommon.
Yeah. I think the idea of using a bunch of backgrounds here is very fun.
Yep.
Because you have two commanders that can take advantage of this well, and they all like the set that has been included here all play into the actual strategy well.
Yes.
Sacrificing creatures and
giving tokens +2/+2.
Right. Boosting tokens and what the double striking one I think is making your Sylvar hit double, and you get a bunch of boosts that are all relevant.
We also have one of our top 5s with Smothering Ti. We have good card draw. Smuggler's Share, I think, is not a card that people really love, but I like it here. I think it's always given me very good value. And finally, we've got our mana base, 36 lands. It's probably veggie approved.
The 36 lands is low.
But everything in the deck is cheaper.
36 lands I think is a little low for me, knowing that there is only a Soul Ring in the deck.
Yes. If hypothetically, if there was a few more rocks, we're happy with 36?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So I would do 34, add a bunch more rocks. The Plazas of Heroes is really cool, standard, staple, and really neat with the types of commanders that you're using, especially because ones go real tall. I'm
not as big on using this many basics.
I was going to say, it doesn't seem very optimized.
Sometimes it's a budget thing. Sometimes you're just like, you know what? They do the job. They come in untapped. Let's not worry about it. But to me, that's a lot of spots where you could put in like even just like a Rogue's Passage here. Allows your big old Sylvar to swing for free. So I would look for a little bit more utility in the lands, and even just a couple more lands that produce all of the colors that I'm looking for.
Yes, I think that there are not enough lands that have double or triple pips. Now those are expensive, the triomes and shock lands. I know that they're certainly expensive, but even a couple of comes into play tapped lands, I wouldn't mind, just to sort of help ease the mana base, so that way you could fit in colorless lands like Rogue's Passage.
Oh, one more. Exotic Orchard. Exotic Orchard is like
dirt cheap,
pennies because it's in every precon. But I don't remember. I saw the numbers on it at some point. It's almost always worth it to run it in 3 color. It is usually worth it to run it in 2 colors.
All right, so let's go ahead and start with our ratings here. What do you give this for a general mana base that includes ramp spells, rocks? I think it needs some work.
I do too. I'm going to give this, it's a 2 out of 5 as far as mana base. Like, it functions. It's fine. But I think there's a lot of room to improve, even if it's on a budget. But you have that whole range of like, okay, add just some more budget that do multiple colors and a few utilities, all the way up through like, shocks and fetches and things like that. Yeah. So there's a lot of room to grow here.
I agree. There's a lot of room to grow. I'll be a little bit more generous. I'll say a 3. But I'm also a lot greedier in my mana bases than Veggie. I would say throw in some more rocks and some extra pips, and I would be pretty happy here. Okay, moving on to the general synergy for this deck. We talked about the partners being very specific and telling you what the deck wants to do. Do you think that this build from Rob the Princess has sort of been able to accomplish that goal for what these partners want to do?
Yeah, no, I think that's where the deck shines the most. I would say that this for me is a 5 out of 5 for synergy, because each piece is doing a very vital thing, but you have multiple copies of like certain effects that really make the deck work, and the fact that you're like cool deck building thing is that there are all of these backgrounds and you get the benefit from your partner commanders, and those effects are still things that are very relevant to your strategy. Every single thing like definitely belongs here.
Yeah, I loved the synergy. I got to shuffle this up, and the enchantments all made me so happy. The creature and the token generation all made me super happy. They all did exactly what those commanders wanted to be doing, and there was very few times no times that I played a card and was like, this does not do what I wish it did. It was like, oh, this does a thing I actively want to do, and that was very good for me. Flavor. Veggie, how do you like token sacrifice stuff?
I think the flavor here is very good since Sylvar is eating the humans.
Mm-hmm. But how do we feel about someone making humans to sacrifice to Sylvar? That's a little dark.
Yeah, but that's the idea. It's still very flavorful.
They taste like chicken.
I wouldn't know, but I like the leaning into the backgrounds, building aspect. Yeah. I like the secondary legendary matters kind of sub theme. And so these different layers really hit the spot for me as far as synergy or as far as flavor. So I think I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5 as far as flavor.
5 out of 5. Tastes like chicken. All right, so Veggie, give me your final score.
Separately from all the other scores, this just being a me thing, it's not really my strategy. It's not really my play style, and the mana base hurts me a little bit.
A lot.
And in spite of that, I think the building of the deck itself, the choice in what was included and this backgrounds concept and the legendary thing and all of it, I would still be happy to play this. I think I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5 on the Veggie scale as a deck that potentially could have been very low.
Okay. I'm way higher, which is why I snapped off the chance to play this deck on the show. We got this submitted and I was just like, Veggie, you don't get to touch this. Don't look at it. It's my deck. And I had a blast playing it, and it is 100% my play style. I think these commanders are a great choice for, huge props to the designed team for them and for choosing to make this a deck that you wanted to play and submit to our show. I'm going to give this a 4.5, but we're not really doing those split ratings. This is all I want to be doing in life. And you get a full 5 if you just fix up that mana base a bit.
And our third list was submitted by our patron G Scarum. It's Queen Marchesa. You know or you love her. 1, a red, a white, and a black. 3/3 Death Touch Haste. When she enters the battlefield, you become the monarch. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if an opponent is the monarch, then you get a 1/1 assassin.
I like being the monarch and getting free creature tokens. Queen Marchesa is a fan favorite. I know that just this past weekend in Chicago, there were multiple cosplays for Queen Marchesa and people just walking around with the crown. Like, pretty common. I think it's one of the fan favorite characters.
We have 1 Planeswalker.
I know I'm in the minority here, but I like a Planeswalker or 2 in basically every deck that I build. I feel like Planeswalkers give some personality. I don't just throw powerful Planeswalkers in. I really like synergy-specific Planeswalkers that really match the theme of what the deck is trying to do. And I like the characters. For me, it's a flavor thing.
I get the same feeling out of just legendary creatures. I feel like whenever I play a Planeswalker, they get a little bit more hate than they deserve. So I don't get to do all the cool stuff with them, but I could see why this one makes sense here, since you are probably just dropping it down immediately -4. Everybody's left with only 1 creature, and nobody wants to take the monarch from you when yours is Death Touch.
Yep. This is an interesting pile of creatures. I didn't mean that negatively. I just meant I'm not initially seeing a theme or a trend, because so many, I play a lot of these. Esper Sentinel and Sun Titan, I see that those go well. This guy's a dungeon guy, right?
Yeah.
And then also we have this chick over here, the Pyromancer, for like drawing double spells. And then that kind of goes with Shieldred. Like I'm seeing like 6 different types of decks that I typically build.
Yeah, the first thing that I picked up on is that there are actually a lot of dungeon creatures. A bunch of them scattered throughout here. Like Acererak, Caves of Chaos. Let's see. There's Nadar, Radiant Solar, Ravenloft Adventurer, Safana, Seasoned Dungeoneer, the White Plume Adventurer, Triumph Adventurer. That's 9 just trying to look very quickly. So there must be a pretty strong venture theme.
Yeah.
That's a lot of board wipes.
I was going to say the same thing. Wow.
This is interesting because the majority of these are also like not even specific board wipes. They're just like straight up destroy. The only ones that are a little choosy are like Ruinous Ultimatum and Tragic Arrogance and Mythos, but
they really like long games. We have some pretty splashy instances as well. A Chroma's Will.
And this actually might explain the sorcerers a little bit. The Chroma's Will gives Indestructible. Flawless Maneuver gives Indestructible. Grand Crescendo gives Indestructible. So they might not be, the games might not be as long as we had initially thought.
Yeah. I think this flickers all of your stuff as well.
Yes. Okay. I see a little bit of what's going on here.
Yep. There's a lot of rocks. Veggie's Happy Place.
Yes. Good. Yes. Good.
I feel like, you know, the sort of like sexy photos of like the girls with like money or whatever behind them, and they're like kind of wiggling around on the floor. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't know what you're talking about. Can you describe a little more?
But I can picture Veggie just like with his mana rocks, like, oh, yes.
Look, it's just, you're in Mardu of all color combinations.
I hope they have 28 lands just to upset you.
But especially for Marchesa in particular, I like having a bunch of the 2 mana rocks because it means you can play Queen Marchesa on turn 3.
All right, now let's talk about the theme of today's show, which is the enchantments. So let's see how this deck sort of picks and chooses enchantments to really amplify the game plan of this deck.
And this one's very important because Marchesa cares about the Monarch, and I'd say the majority of the good Monarch cards are enchantments.
And you have cards like Ghostly Prison, which helps protect the monarchy.
I will say I'm surprised. I thought there would be more of the Quartzes. We have all of the original ones to give you the Monarch back, but none of the new ones. Let's see. No Mercy is a very, very good way to dissuade people from attacking you. Oh
my gosh. I did not. Yeah. I'm surprised we don't see a couple more of the prison effects. Like Ghostly Prison?
We have one more here, Sphere of Safety, which actually cares about the number of enchantments that you have.
Okay.
So that can be a little worse than Ghostly Prison. But yeah, there's
Norn's Annex.
Norn's Annex. There are some creatures that also attacks. You may want to take a look at this one. The Island Sanctuary, which is a white card. The Island Sanctuary, white card.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can skip your draw to not get attacked except by flying or island walk.
Which is going to be very few, and you get to draw with the Monarch anyway, so you're just preventing... But then you're not getting a bonus for the Monarch.
Well, I mean...
But it's better than giving it to your opponent.
Also, your bonus is people can't attack you. Like, I think that's a pretty good bonus.
That's true.
All right, lands. They got...
31?
31, but they did have 3 MDFCs.
So 34 plus a lot of rocks.
Yep, not enough. But the rocks were good.
I think this is about what I would put. I think I very rarely go below 32 lands, but you don't usually have that many rocks. So this gets the Nerd Girl stamp of approval.
I don't know. Because there were so many good like Monarch and Dungeon creatures that we saw from before that were like 6 mana or so. I would want that consistency, but let's see.
I see one of my new sort of like Nerd Girl favorites. Big fan of Hall of Heliod's Generosity.
And on theme for today's episode.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that feels out of place to me here in this mana base are the bounce lands, because everything else either has a specific function or comes into play untapped. And so I think those I would feel like are slowing me down a little bit, and are maybe why this was cut down to 31 lands, because they give you the illusion of playing more. But otherwise, this seems really solid, and I feel like I'd be able to play what I needed.
Yeah, the bounce lands are interesting, right? Because you're right, the rest of them come into play untapped, but at a certain point, it's okay to have some tapped lands, but you don't want to have too many. But if you don't have many, then should you have any at all? It's a balancing act. And I agree that it might make it so you feel like you can run less lands depending on how many you have. The only other one I really wanted to mention was the Dungeon Descent, just to point out another one of those sort of dungeon sub-theme that we've got going on here. And I think that's a pretty cool option. Let's take a quick sec to just talk about the mana base. Give it a rating between 1 through 5, Veggie. That includes ramp, rocks, and general mana base. How you feeling?
I am pretty satisfied with this. I would give it a 4 out of 5. I think the things that I would adjust personally would be replacing the bounce lands with some untapped lands, putting a couple more in. I'm very happy about the number of mana rocks that are available in this, and then maybe I would fill those extra land spots with like some extra utility.
Okay, I like that. I agree with a 4 out of 5. So moving on to synergy, I personally don't think that the deck did not scream Marchesa to me, but they did build Marchesa in a very synergistic way. It just didn't matter that she was in the command zone.
I feel like this makes sense to me.
Okay.
Because Marchesa, Monarch, there's going to be some level of Monarch in the deck. Why not double down on that? And you have a bunch of these initiative cards as well, which are pushing you farther down in your dungeons. So, like, as long as you have the initiative, you venture, even if you're not in the initiative dungeon. So if your deck is built to stop people from hitting you, you just get extra value from having initiative/venture anyway.
Was there a lot of initiative stuff? I know a lot of the creatures were specific just venture into the next level of the dungeon, which you're doing regardless of whether or not you have the initiative. And I agree that is a theme, but I don't think you have to have Marchesa in the command zone to make that theme work or viable. And we weren't utilizing like the assassins or the death touch and haste. Like the other parts of Marchesa weren't really being brought out to shine.
I think that's very fair.
I think that the deck does feel very synergistic within itself. It's just, I think you could almost slap any Mardu commander onto this deck and it would feel mostly the same to me. The deck is built to do a thing, and I think those pieces all synergize very well together. So I would give this a 4.
All right. That's funny because after the discussion that we just had, you would think that I would score it equally or higher. To me, I'm putting this slightly lower. I'm giving it a 3 out of 5 because I don't know that we figured out what some of those like draw 2 cards were for. I do feel like
I think that's the only thing that does synergize with Marchesa. When you have the Monarch, you're drawing the additional card, right? I think that's the part that is supposed to go with the commander.
So I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5 because it has these draw 2 cards, which trigger when you're the Monarch.
I just didn't see enough of it to justify it where I saw so much more dungeon. But I think that, yay, I found one that Veggie missed. That is synergy flavor-wise. How do you feel either about the commander or the flavor of this deck?
I mean, I like mechanically the idea of using the monarchy and initiative together. I don't know. It did not feel to me like any sort of like specific theme or lore or anything like that was a focus of the deck. It didn't really take away from it for me, but I don't think that it was something that was in mind when building this. So I will give it a 3 out of 5. I just don't think it was the forefront of what this deck was doing.
Yeah, I don't think that there was anything super cohesive. We saw multiple sort of game plans, right? You had the Monarch multiple draw, you had some dungeon stuff, you had random finishers like Sun Titan and things in there. There was a little bit of flavor with keeping your creatures alive and producing some assassins. That's kind of cool, but I agree. I think it's like a 2. What?
I'm laughing. You're like, yeah, finishers like Sun Titan. I'm like,
I play baby magic.
It's a very, very fundamental difference. You're like, yes, a finisher like this value piece.
That gets
you just value them and then win, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I guess, but that's, I don't know. That's a really a finisher, but
we've had a Sun Titan win the game on the show. The turn that you play it, you get something, and then you kill them.
Look, just because I swing with the Birds of Paradise with the +1/+1 counter on it doesn't mean that the Birds of Paradise is a finisher. It may win the game, but it is not a finisher.
A 1/1 flyer is not a 1/2 flyer is not as powerful as a Sun Titan. It's a top end card is probably a better word I should have used other than finisher, but I do think he's very strong. So anyway, I like the rating of flavor being a 2 because it did feel very disjointed as to what this deck was trying to do, and it didn't really dive deep enough into like the dungeon D&D theme to spike a higher rating.
Yeah, just pick good cards that work in the deck.
Yep. Veggie, what's your Veggie scale rating?
Monarch and Initiative and Dungeons are fun mechanics to me. Feels like a pretty good time, and I like my decks to function smoothly, and I liked that I liked the package of mana rocks. I think the abundance of like board wipes is turns me off a little bit. But there was at least a plan for those. So I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5 on the Veggie scale.
I would typically agree with you that the abundance of board clears would be not something I'm interested in, but the abundance of it being a one-sided board clear does appeal to me. That is a big fun value for me. I think that would be really awesome to use and play. I'm on the higher side. I like draw 2. I like the Monarch. I like Queen Marchesa, and I really like dungeons and the D&D vibe. So I'm happy with this deck. It does seem like a good time.
Yeah, love finishers like Sun Titan.
Yeah.
Thanks again to our patrons who submitted deck lists for today. Tar Beast, Rob the Princess, and G Scarum. It was a lot of fun to look at these and dive a little bit deeper into certain enchantments because of what you submitted.
Yeah, if you guys would like to take a closer look at any of these deck lists, we will have links to them down below in the description of the video. And don't forget, if you would like to have your deck lists checked out either here on this show for Deck Tech or played on Decked Out, you can check out our Patreon. You can get exclusive perks like tokens, spell table games, or these deck techs.
Don't forget, clicky, likey, subscribe, good, help, nice, good time.
Yeah.
We will see you next time on Commander
Countdown.
Countdown.